You are listening to Stages Podcast with Mary Lee Fairbanks and Stephanie J. Block. Welcome to Season 6. Here on Stages Podcast, we go behind the scenes and beyond the resume to explore the crossroads of creativity, spirituality, motherhood, and so much more. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. Give us 5 stars and a great review. It really helps us grow. Thanks for joining Stages Podcast, Season 6. Question.
I am wearing a onesie. I went to
Nice. Nice.
Little does she know, this is a onesie from a thrift store from the Folsom prison. So it's really a prisoner outfit.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
Why are you wearing that?
Because it's so cool. It has, trust me, I've saged the crajunk out
Okay.
of it.
All right.
And yeah, no. It doesn't make me feel weird at all, but it's like got this, not a QR code. Before QR codes, what were the, all the lines that
Yeah.
Yeah. So the prisoner obviously was, whatever there's numbers in there.
623674.
24601. Girl, we are musical theater through and through. We try to deny it. I know.
Tomorrow night is Schmooky Dune's first preview.
I think Broadway is all aflutter and
Very
ready.
excited.
They're
Very
ready.
excited. Can't wait.
And you're nice.
I wish you were around.
Me too. No, there are many times where I look at the East Coast and I go, oh, I'm glad I'm in Northern California. And then there are times where I actually physically ache
I know.
knowing that something special is happening. And I am just,
It's
if I
hard.
was there, I would be,
It's hard.
and
And it's even hard,
participating.
like, just living out here in Massachusetts, because, like, there's so many, like, I'd love to pop into a rehearsal, and I'd love
Sure.
to pop in. But
Sure.
I'm going to drive all the way down to pop into a rehearsal and have a cocktail. Like,
No.
So sometimes I get achy too. I get it. I know what
Yeah.
it is. I
So maybe
understand.
I was a time traveler, right? For my special other earthly skills, maybe teleportation. One of our guests said that teleportation,
I forget.
and that
But
would
I
be
know
real
what
nice to just go, bloop, and then
Yep.
you're there,
And then go home. Then
and
you're home
then
before 11
and then go
and tucked into bed.
That's right. That's right, lady. That's the dream.
Oh, and I took a huge group to go see the Outsiders tour
Oh yeah.
the other night.
Are they already in Massachusetts?
They are. Yep.
Wow. Okay.
And God, it was packed
Electric.
to the gills. Young kids screaming their head off. Talking to this girls in front of us the 6th time they've seen it.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
it's bonkers. And the cast is so good.
Yeah.
They're
Good.
so good. I mean,
Yeah.
they're so young. So Michael and I were walking to the car after, and he was like, "What are they all doing right now?" I'm like, "Are you kidding? They're all like throwing on baseball caps and going out for cocktails." And he's
Oh,
like,
for sure. 100%.
How do they do it? Meanwhile, I'm like, thank God it's a 7 p.m. curtain so I can be at home in bed
Yes.
at
Yeah.
11. And so then I get a text from one of the people because we brought a big group of 45. And she sends a text. She's like, my husband and I went out to a bar and the whole cast is here. And she starts sending pictures of selfies with her and the cast. I was like, I told you, they're all out
That's
having a
fun.
party.
They're out.
Like,
Yeah.
to be 22 again. Oh my God.
I almost feel there needs to be like a subset of Broadway with like Outsiders Junior, Les Mis Junior, so that those of us that want to go, but we just need the 90-minute experience.
I
So you
can't
can
cope
go
with
see
the
the full thing.
The
But if
the
you're just
preview on
tired,
Saturday night is 8 p.m. and I'm like, God damn it. 8 p.m.
she make a Dune Junior. Come on, 90
Come on.
minutes.
So sad. You get so old.
I don't know. Now.
I keep meaning to ask you, how was Alice in Wonderland?
Oh, thanks. It was really special. Oh, you're a sweet girl. She
You're in so
has
much
it.
trouble.
She
You're in so much
has
trouble.
it.
How could
Yep.
you not? Either you and Seb were going to cancel it out or it was
Oh
going to
my
be twice as bad.
gosh. I mean, all of the ways
Oh.
in which this 11-year-old is connected to her material, it stands in and listens to her fellow actors, is able to change things. Like I got to see her, I worked backstage. Out of 6 shows, I worked backstage 4, but I watched twice. And she would shift things. I was like, oh, well, that's new. She did something
Making
new.
choices.
Yes, exactly. Based on what the other actors are giving her. But she had the English accent. A cookie? Oh, it's so delicious. I wonder what would happen if I ate this
Do
cookie.
you
I
have a
mean, you're just
video?
like,
Do you have a
wait.
video?
There will be a video and you
You need
will
to send it to
be
me.
sending it.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I'll send it. You will
God.
be watching. Yeah. Yeah, she's a sparkly,
She's
sparkly cupcake
delicious.
of a human. Yeah. Yes, yes.
She really is.
There's
She's
something,
just a
as silly as this
delicious
sounds,
cupcake.
there's something Megan Hilty about her in the sense that when she's around, it's just like delicious. It's delicious. It's delicious. So it will be interesting to watch her. Actually, we were just downstairs doing math with her. Guys, fifth grade math, converting, pints into cups, and there's 26 and 1/8. How many of a thing of a thing? What in the what? And her little brain, sorry, her little brain is working overtime. I love that her school still uses like real textbooks. It's not like there's plenty of Chromebook interaction, but she's got to do things. She's got to write it out. She's got to, and her breathing and her sitting in the problem and trying to use her critical thinking and changing things around when what I know she wants to do is just like sing out the problem and doesn't matter how it ends as long as it's musical. I know that's what her little heart wants to do. And
She's not going to need
honestly,
a lot of math. I mean,
no,
you need math for baking, okay? A
that's it.
quarter cup, a
Yeah,
third
but a
cup.
pint? I mean, unless you're in
Come
Ireland
on
and you're like,
now.
okay, 2 pints, that's going to be 8 cups. That's a lot of ale. I probably shouldn't drink 2 pints of ale.
I
Oh
know.
my
I know. I
gosh.
wish schools saw what made the soul sparkle and then just you still have to learn math, but you could learn it in a way that made sense to learn it for the thing you love. That's what I
Correct.
always say.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if they understood the reason to learn it,
Yeah.
then it's worth learning. Like,
Right.
okay, this is
I
how
mean,
many
if we were
pints we
telling her
need to
time
paint a set.
signatures, she would figure out
Yeah.
the 4/4 time signature or the 3/4
Right.
time signature, and it wouldn't seem impossible because
Right.
she'd be passionate about the reason why she's learning it. Yeah.
Exactly. And she can see how to apply it to the life that she dreams about. And
Yeah.
even at 11, that matters, I
Even if
think.
you're not 11, that matters. It did for me anyway.
Trusted as of somehow. Love where you are now.
Actors and performers spend much of our time straddling the world between authenticity and shapeshifting. We walk a line that honors our instincts while maintaining a flexibility to become a character and portray a director or playwright's vision. On Stages Pod, we've had conversations with some of the greatest performers, directors, writers, composers, and we consistently come across a subject of imposter syndrome. Many times in a world where manifestation is now becoming a buzzword, it's which can be a good thing or a bad thing. We need more than ever to understand ourselves deeply in order to maintain our authenticity while shapeshifting and manifesting a career that we deeply love while consistently having the feeling that it needs to be legitimized. It's a very challenging road to walk. And one of the things I love exploring are the crossroads between spirituality and creativity. Where does creativity come from? How do we maintain it? Where do ideas even generate from? Today's guest can probably answer many of these questions. And she has the ability to do so in a unique way because she straddles the line between the materialistic scientific world and the spiritualist seeking world. It's a balance that you don't often see done successfully. Today's guest is an internationally recognized award winning psychiatrist and executive coach. She's the best selling author. Her book is called Fulfilled: How the Science of Spirituality Can Help You Live a Happier, More Meaningful Life. She explores the integration of Western psychiatry and spiritual principles. She draws from her experience as a Yale trained psychiatrist and her global travels studying traditions like Buddhism, shamanism, and the Kabbalah. It just makes me so happy. She is a clinical assistant professor at Yale Medical School, where she co founded the world's first spiritual and mental health program. And she's dedicated her career to studying the way the worlds of the spirit interact with the world of science. please welcome Dr. Anna Yusim. I'm so happy you're here.
Yay!
Thank you so much, Marilee, for the beautiful introduction. And wow, I just am so moved. And I feel as though I have 80 million things to say about just what you wrote about the intersection of creativity, spirituality. Where do these thoughts and the brilliance and epiphanies come from for human beings? So I'm so excited to speak with the both of you today.
Oh, thank you. Well, let's start there then. Where do you think ideas generate from?
Right, exactly. So this is a really big question, and I have so many different ways to answer that. So, first, let's talk about this idea of multiple discovery. So, some of the greatest discoveries in the world were actually discovered by multiple people in different places, right? And
Yeah.
so they somehow either get tapped into the same information that they then synthesize in the same way, or there's in the public discourse empirically in scientific papers, there's the same information that people are able to put together, or is it that they get a download from a
Yeah.
higher source and certain people tap into the same channels, perhaps? You know, Michael Jackson would often say, you better write this down right away because if you don't, Prince is going to download the same exact thing. And
Yeah.
yesterday, yeah, 2 days ago, we had a talk with a Yale musicologist and another Yale researcher at the interface of music and medicine. And the musicologist was like, you know what? When I get a download of a song, at sometimes I'm mad at God. I'm like, God, I don't want this. Give it to somebody else. But I know it's for me and I'm supposed to do it. And so people, you know, how people get creative discourse, how people open up to receiving that is the most interesting question. You could say that you're just rational beings and you create it rationally by working really hard. But we all know that inspiration doesn't always work rationally. We all know
Right.
that sometimes we can work so hard on something, go to sleep, and suddenly you wake up knowing exactly what to do, how to solve that math
Yeah.
problem, how to finish that, uh, painting or that piece of writing that you were going to do. So I think that the question of creativity is very vast. And I think that there's many things outside of our control. And what is within our control is how aware we are of what's happening and what we do with that which comes through us.
When you walk through life, Anna, is your compass more leaning toward the head, the heart, or the gut? My
Mhm.
dad always used to say, follow your heart, follow your heart. My mother-in-law says your gut is God. And then there's some sort of intellectual, I don't know whether it's because I'm a Virgo, I don't know whether it's because I'm Gen X and I was a latchkey kid, but then my mind kind of sets in and starts to filter all of that stuff in a way that makes it digestible for the human world. Does that make sense? It,
100%. And moreover, yes, this is like Daniel Kahneman, the behavioral economist who won the Nobel Prize for economics, right? He wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. And in his book, he basically makes this point that we think that we're these rational beings. We think that we're always making these rational, slow, deliberate decisions. But actually, if you really look at the data, we're not that at all. We're actually very intuitive, instinctual beings. We make very quick decisions and then use retrospective rationalization
Mm.
with our reason and our minds only later to justify and explain why we made those decisions. And so I love all the three people that you were talking about, the heart, the gut, and the brain, right? And for everybody, it's different. There are people who are super rational, they make rational decisions. And there are people who are very heart centered. And there
Mm.
are people who are much more gut centered. So you have to know who you are and how information
Mm.
comes to you and how you could know truth from falsehood in order to make the right decisions in your life. So I think that it really varies for every individual person.
I
Well,
think
one
I'm a
of the
gut
things I love
person.
about your book is that your book gives very practical ways to tap into some of this stuff through breathing exercises and meditations and things. So let's talk a little about that. How does one begin to understand which they are? Are you more in the head? Are you
Mhm.
more in the gut? Or do you live through the heart?
Definitely.
And and it is some of that might be not coming from a good place. Like you can be in your head because you think you want to be in control,
Absolutely.
you're trying to, or you
Absolutely.
maybe are totally disconnected from your body and your body's trying to tell you stuff and you're not listening. So, how do
Totally.
we distinguish which one we may lean toward? And how do we distinguish between are we just being rational? What did you call it? Post rational
Yeah,
thought,
yeah, yeah.
or are we
Rational. Mhm.
in an
Yeah.
unhealthy
Retrospective
control pattern?
rationalization. Exactly.
So,
Yes.
how do we
Yes.
figure that out?
Yes. Okay. So that's an amazing question. I think that's actually at the crux of so many things. And I think that at the end of the day, what we need to do is we need to first become aware aware of all the different voices or all the different ways of knowing within us. There is the reason, the way that's, our mind can speak very, very loudly. And for some people, the mind yells. And for some people, they are so intellectual that that's all they can hear, to the exclusion of their heart and their gut.
Mm.
And for some people, their heart and gut speaks to them through their mind because that's what they've overdeveloped. They're so rational that that's the only direction that they can use in order to make important decisions. And then there's some people who are so emotional, and you have to be in touch with your emotions too. But then some of us have learned that our emotions, if we feel it too strongly, it's too painful, or it's not okay to be angry or to feel certain emotions. And so we disavow those parts of ourselves. So we actually close ourselves to emotions and then overdevelop our reason and then become overly intellectual, but never know how we're feeling. Some of us have to do that, and with our clients and with patients, we're like, how does that make you feel? They're like, I don't know. Let me think about it. Right. And that's not an uncommon thing. It's not an uncommon with creatives either. And so I think the first thing in answer to your question, to your wonderful question, Marilee, is number one, to be aware of the voice of your mind, the voice of emotion, and then to see what's behind that. Because underneath the very loud voices of your thoughts and emotions is a still quiet voice. And that is the voice of your heart or your intuition. And that voice can only be heard when the other voices are temporarily quieted just a bit to allow that other still voice to come up.
A particular spiritual practice, whether that be the shaman or the gurus or the Buddhist, that is able to quiet most effectively. I know meditation across the board, right? Those of us that are not great at it, I'm raising my hand, listeners, but we still strive to. Is there a spiritual practice that lends itself more readily, more easily to those of us that are still so early in that journey to quiet some of those other voices?
I think that's a great, great question too. And I think also there are many different ones. And I think the first one is awareness of the other voices, awareness even of the reason, and being able to tap in. If my reason were to tell me something right now, what would it tell me? If my emotion were to speak to me right now, what would it tell me? What would my heart tell me? What would my gut tell me? Even asking yourself those questions to start to see what the answers to those would be and how you receive the different information. What does your stomach tell you right now? What does your chest tell you about what you're feeling right now? How about your head? So really seeing what you can glean and which of those is commensurate with the quietest of minds. That's one practice, really. So like looking at all the different parts of your body. Another practice is a breathing practice and basically focusing on your breath in order to quiet your mind a little bit. And my favorite breathing practice is breathing in for 2, holding for 4, and breathing out for 8, and doing that enough times. And what that does is, because you are taking in more oxygen than you're breathing out, you fill your brain with oxygen, which calms. It tells your brain it's safe here. You can calm down. You can calm your thoughts. You can calm your worried heart. And then another practice entirely is actually a mantra practice, coming up with a mantra, whether it's a sound like Om, etc., and being able to just Om or a certain set of vibrational tones like that to really focus on your voice and thereby quiet your mind. And for other people, another practice is exercise. That quiets their mind. So there's so many different ways through mind, body, and spirit that you can quiet the mind to allow the quiet and still voice to come up. And, Marilee had some really interesting questions also about the distinction between the different things. Like, how do you, for instance, distinguish fear from an intuition, things like that?
Right.
How do you distinguish if you're doing a retrospective rationalization or if you're actually being guided? So these are very important and deep and nuanced questions about us knowing ourselves and being able to become more aware of the intuitive guidance that we receive. And so, like, it's a whole like, in order to get at the root of this, you have to just start to become more and more aware and start asking yourself the questions that you want guidance to. With respect to, for instance, fear versus intuition, if whatever you're being guided to do is going to contract you and lead to fear and make you smaller, then it probably is not something that is in the highest and greatest good, because usually the things that you're guided to do will expand you and optimize you and make you feel better, even if you do have to overcome fear in the process.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's really important, because sometimes you have to be drawn to the very thing that you're terrified of in order to grow. You have to force yourself to jump in and do that thing that paralyzes you because
Precisely.
that's the only path to growth.
Right.
Exactly. And that's how we grow as human beings, is to figure out what is the path of what is most difficult, not the path of least resistance, but the path of
Right.
most resistance, and to go precisely in that direction, because that is how you grow. That is how you expand your consciousness.
I feel like so often, and I think for me, I have a very chatty brain, and so
We all
I
do.
will I will come to moments in my life where I really can tap into that quiet voice, and I do have to ask a lot, but I will eventually get. It's like a voice I hear that I know, okay, that's the answer I've been waiting for. And sometimes I can quiet it and I know when I'm just in that flow and it's just going the way I need it to go and it's just coming as it should. But then I inevitably always fall out of it. I always end up skipping back a few steps and then it's almost like working out. You get into this workout routine and it's really great, but then you kind of trip up or you go on vacation and you come back and you're like, oh, I can't get that rhythm again. And it becomes like this struggle to get back into the rhythm of what you know is good for you and what you should be doing. And I feel like, is life's lesson about that ebb and flow? Is it about not being able to consistently stay in that? And that's the goal, is to learn how to ride that in and out? Or is the goal trying to get to that place and sit in that place without being knocked off?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And I think that, yes, and to both of them, I think the goal is to do it one way and then to do it another way and see what works for you, and then to ebb and flow with life. And if being in that state in a continuous fashion is really beneficial for your higher and greater good with respect to what you're looking to, as you use the term, manifest or accomplish, or who you're looking to be in life, then to strive to be in there more. But actually being in that state for too long might take you away from the other very valuable faculties of reason and emotion in your life. And you might be like, okay, I'm very Zen now, but something's missing. Do I really want to be a Buddha all the time? Maybe I need to be a Buddha to get my answer. And then I need to move on with my life and go and be excited and feel my emotions and be really rational. And that's okay too.
Yeah, my husband's always like, the whole point of life is to learning how to flow in ambiguity. And I'm like, well, I don't like that point. I would like some things to just be steady. Thank you very much.
Right. But as soon as you invite community in,
Mm,
then the steadiness is gone, right? And so our whole goal
right.
is to make ourselves as whole, peaceful, aware as we can, so that then we can contribute out into the community. And when you're out there, you can only prepare, you cannot plan, because we don't know what these beautiful outside forces and spirits are going to introduce to us, are going to
Trigger.
perhaps trigger, derail. But that's the whole point. Like, you can't be a silo and be at your highest good. You have to be among other people in order to really feel fulfilled and contribute. Speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. We all want to go and be a very spiritual, elevated, high consciousness person on a mountaintop meditating. Absolutely, that's easy to do. Go be away from humanity with no triggers and no, nothing to move you away from your highest state. And that's lovely if we're able to do that for a week, maybe even a month, maybe even for a year sometimes. But the majority of us have to reintegrate into society and community, because you're exactly right. We're here for a higher purpose, and we have families and friends, and our mission is greater than us, even though sometimes that level of solitude and singularity can be so, important for our own self-reflection and mirroring back to ourselves what is possible. But if we can take that back into community and reintegrate and help elevate the collective through the work that we ourselves are able to do, it's all the more powerful.
Stages Podcast will be right back after a word from our sponsor. Do you notice patterns in people as they're sort of elevating spiritually? Do you notice there are certain habits that drop away or certain mannerisms that drop away? Do they want to be alone more? Are they guided towards certain people more as you kind of elevate spiritually?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and it's the mapping out of the deeper ends of human experience is something that's been written about extensively,
Oh, say
especially
that phrase again. Mapping out of the, say that phrase one more time.
the deeper parts of the human experience.
Mapping out the deeper parts of the human experience.
Yeah, and there's a man named Daniel Ingram. He wrote a book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. He has written a brilliant map of the deeper end of human experience. And there's countries like Tibet and Bhutan where people essentially spend lifetimes in meditation. And the maps there of those parts of the human experience are above and beyond what we know at all. And so Daniel Ingram had tried to make it accessible to the common man. He's an emergency room physician who's now devoting his life to helping other doctors understand what it means when someone has a spiritual experience and overshoots the mark. And then they can, have a psychotic break or something like that. But it's not because they're schizophrenic. It's because they overshot the mark in a spiritual experience. So they don't necessarily need to be put on medication, but they need to be helped to ground, etc., in order to reintegrate back into society. And so, your question as to what do we do and what happens to people as they go up, it really varies, but people have taken a great deal of energy and effort to map that out. So he would be a great person he's a very, very high level meditator, very interesting person overall.
Extraordinary. Now, has Western science looked at the brain, and can shadings or images show the difference between schizophrenia and that of someone who is on a higher spiritual sort of vibration and needs to be not reined in, that's the wrong word, but
Grounded.
sort of grounded back to that of the present?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that exact question, but I would think that maybe the brains could even look the same because they're both having a psychotic experience, even though one is short-lived and the other one could very well be a product of something spiritual and therefore more easily reversible. There's many different reasons why somebody could have a psychotic break, right? And whenever I think about um, any sort of cause or etiology of a symptom, I think about the biopsychosocial spiritual format. So there could be biological reasons, which is genetic propensities, neurotransmitter issues, even things with, dietary things or other neurochemical imbalances. Then there's psychological triggers. Something is so stressful, you don't know what to do. Social triggers, you're totally lonely, have no support. And then spiritual triggers, someone feels really, really empty. So on some level, all of those things could result in a psychotic break. And for the first one, biological, someone could be taking a lot of psychedelics or drugs or whatever else. Or medication could induce that as well. Psychiatric medication could induce a psychotic state. So you think about what are all the causes, how do you address the causes, and what do you need to do to stabilize a person? And is this something that is longer term or shorter term? Do they have a strong family history? If they have a strong family history, you really have to monitor them. If they have no family history, and this is a one-time thing induced by psychedelics or induced by a spiritual experience like meditating, then you have to think about it in a different way.
So there's so many roads I want to go off right now because I want to talk about the psychedelic experiences that are really being tested in completely legitimate universities now and stuff. But what I want to do is go to epigenetics because that's another form of what you're talking about too. It could be coming from something epigenetic. And I know that you did a lot of work in Rwanda studying the trauma from the genocide. And I was excited to hear that because I'm actually a Rwandan citizen. I go back and forth to Rwanda all the time. And so,
Amazing.
so I'm really fascinated by the idea of the epigenetics and how we pass trauma down through the generations. So it's like a three-part question. One, can you explain in a really simple way what actually chemically and physically happens as we pass down that epigenetic DNA? And two, does it have to be something as big as famine and war and genocide? Can it be something as simple as, unrequited dreams of our grandmother that get passed down into us as women and make us see the world in a specific way? And how do we know the difference between us physically reacting to epigenetic things that maybe aren't ours to carry, versus something that is actually happening in this lifetime that we are maybe overreacting to? Do you know because
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
epigenetic?
great questions, right? And there's such interesting work in epigenetics. Dr. Dolores Malaspina at NYU has done some really interesting studies looking at how individuals after a war, their genetics aren't just changed, but being in utero, like in
Right.
the womb of a mother exposed to war, changes a baby's likelihood to get schizophrenia, likelihood to be depressed, etc. And these are epigenetic things. And so what epigenetics is essentially when something in your external environment affects which genes get expressed. It doesn't affect your actual genome. We all have, like, you have two people with the same genome, right? Two identical twins. But because of epigenetic differences, one will express these genes, the other one will express these genes. So they will look
Oh.
identical, but different genes will be expressed. And so certain kinds of trauma, so famine, war, like really extreme trauma, changes which genes get expressed. And this is why there's this concept of intergenerational transmission of trauma
But
that happens through
does
the
it only
epigenetic.
change it in a pregnant mother, or can it change it before the woman is even pregnant and she passes it on?
Absolutely.
So it can change it at
Absolutely.
any point. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it could change it for you. It changes it for you in your, like, after you have babies. Like,
Right.
we are always and so how does it happen biochemically? There's this process, for instance, called methylation, which is when you add a little carbon and three hydrogens to a certain gene to make the gene expressed versus not expressed. So at the
Hmm.
biological level, something changes that determines whether this is expressed versus, something that's dormant in this
Hmm.
particular population. So that's, the answer to the first question. And numerous stressors can ultimately be responsible for intergenerational transmission of trauma. And we know that Holocaust survivors and the children of Holocaust survivors have much higher rates of many mental health conditions. And
Mm.
that, another question you had was about, how do you know if this is mine to carry, or is this something that, yeah, I think the answer to that question is, if it is within your consciousness, it's yours to carry no matter what. It's not your fault that you have it. It's never that, but it's your responsibility to deal with it. And it's your
Heal it.
opportunity to rise above it. So if it's within your consciousness or that of your children or of your family, there's always something that we can do about it. And I talk to people about mental health issues. I was just talking to a man who endured tremendous hardship and was at a very, very high level of government in another country because of fraud in the government, had horrible things happen to him, now has severe PTSD. But this man was, like, prior to that, so productive, so industrious, so entrepreneurial. And so now we're, like, trying to release, like, lift the veil to enable him to be his full self again, to lift the veil of depression and PTSD, to enable him to be the totality of himself. So he didn't cause any of that stuff, but it came into his field, and now he has to take responsibility and rise above it.
Do you ever use EMDR to help people get past all of that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
EMDR, very powerful trauma therapy. I think EMDR is wonderful. There's also certain psychedelics for the right person in certain circumstances that are helpful with trauma. Brain spotting is another very powerful
Yeah.
trauma
Mm.
technique.
Tell me what
And
brain spotting is. What's that?
Eye placement, isn't it?
yeah, it's similar. EMDR and brain spot, exactly. They're both. It's this idea that we store a lot of our traumatic memories in our brain and in our body, and it's putting you in touch with your brain and body in a way so that you can essentially localize the presence of a traumatic experience by having you recall it forward and backward, and doing certain
Mm.
either eye movements or tapping on different parts of your body. And in this seemingly very simple sequence, you release the trauma and it has a different hold on you than it did before. So
Hmm.
it's
My
it's a
husband
very.
did it, and
Hmm?
he's very much of the head, although he has a massive heart. But he would finish and go, I don't know if it did anything. I don't think I did anything. I'm looking for a result. I'm looking for the right answer. I'm looking for digging deep. And he said it was really just a twitch of my face where my eyes would sit when I was thinking. We would stop. We would talk about the story again, try to refile it. But he would walk out there feeling healthier, but completely bewildered because he couldn't logically put those pieces
Yeah,
together. And that's sort of the beauty
totally.
of you have to believe, right? You're either going to believe in faith or fear. And he had to lean into just believing of the faith of what that process was doing to release that trauma for him.
And did it
Abs-
help release it?
It did help
It
a
did.
lot.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying both he and I should continue in our therapy journey, but it did release a lot. Yes.
Because I've done EMDR and I was shocked at how much it did
The
for me.
effectiveness.
I was
Yeah.
shocked. I mean, I left the room and I felt physically different in the room. I felt different. Yeah.
I hope I'm not saying too much. Seb would leave his appointments and he would be violently ill or he would sleep
Oh,
for
that's
15
interesting.
hours. His therapist then, I don't know, 2 or 3 appointments later said, do you realize that when you leave here, you go back to infancy? You're acting as a child. All you're doing is sleeping and pooping. And he was like, oh my goodness. So then they took it back to even at an earlier stage of his life and what that might reveal. But yes, the manifestation and the physicality of how it would show itself afterwards was really revealing. Really
Oh, I
revealing.
think that's I see. I think these things are fascinating.
Yeah.
And what I love about the work you're doing, Anna, is you have all of the legitimate scientific backing behind you that tends to be very rigid and materialist, and it must be able to be repeated and
And
quantified.
monetized and
Yes, right.
mm,
But you also have this incredible spiritual depth and vision that can't be quantified and
mm,
can't be repeated and can't be replicated. And somehow you've managed to cross that boundary, which I don't think happens very often unless I'm misinformed. It feels to me like the academic and scientific community is very rigid in the way they, and I understand why. They have a formula and they have to, that's their job as scientists, right? To stick to a formula. But I think there's so much that can't be proven. I was talking about this with my husband. I said, look, if 50 years ago someone said that trees can communicate under the ground and talk to each other and feed each other, people would have been like, okay, crazy. But
yeah,
now it's
yeah.
actually proven. And so I don't think we should, or the scientific or community should be able to just poo-poo things that can't be proven, because it just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Doesn't mean it
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
They're not binary, are they? Nope.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that that's exactly right. And yeah, like so mental health and spirituality or science and spirituality have been very strange bedfellows for a very long time, precisely for the reasons that you said, because science is looking for that which is repeatable, subject to
Yeah.
a double-blind controlled trial, something you can see with your eyes and hear with your ears, and that's science. And then on the other hand, there is spirituality where the experiences are ineffable, difficult to quantify, difficult to put into a box, very subjective, highly transcendent. How do you subject that to a double blind control trial? It's very hard. And yet, because of that, that's why the science of spirituality is such a paradox and why it's so, so interesting to me. My whole life has been about reconciling paradoxes in everything. And so the more that things don't seem to fit, the more interesting it is to try to get them to understand or to try to to understand how we can coexist with the both of them. This is
Mm.
why I have made it my purpose to try to integrate the science and spirituality and try to subject so much of the spiritual study that is happening to double-blind controlled trials and working with the scientists that do that at Yale and then at Harvard and
Harvard
other.
and Stanford. That in and of itself seems like two completely different worlds, doesn't it?
In so many ways, in so many ways. And it's not that luckily, I haven't gotten much pushback. And I feel like I'm at a point in society's evolution where people are open to that. And so Yale has been open in my starting this mental health and spirituality center, which has been wonderful. And yet starting it has also been like pushing a heavy elephant up a hill. So they're like, yes. And it's very difficult for many, many different reasons, because on one hand, they're ready, they're excited. And on the other hand, there is some challenges, and ideologically, philosophically, bureaucratically, et cetera. And I think that that would be the case, not just at Yale, at any other institution. I know Harvard has very similar issues there, but it's exciting. It is a new field, and it is very exciting that more and more professionals with a scientific background are stepping into this field in order to legitimize it scientifically, because in so many ways, science is still the currency of exchange in the Western world when it comes to our understanding of what is true.
Stages podcast will be right back, so don't go away.
So
Were you always excited about the marriage of dualities, even as a youngster, as a young person? Could you recognize them and say, there's actually connective tissue here. There's actually similarities rather than this one being so far left, this one being so far right. And what was that aha moment for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I went to high school at this place called IMSA, the Illinois Math and Science Academy. And that is where I think my mind first was opened. And IMSA was all about this idea that the greatest discoveries don't happen within a silo, they happen at the interconnectedness. Between disciplines. And so there are
Mm.
all of these interdisciplinary courses. And that's when I first started thinking in that way. It got me to be creative and to think and to see outside the box. So I think that that's first where I got very excited about this idea. But then when I look at my life as a whole, I'm an in the box person, but I'm a very outside the box person in a million different ways. And
Mm.
so I feel as though, personally, professionally, intellectually, it's always been there. And I think it was at one point when I had some astrology reading in Bali, and this guy looked at my chart. He's like, your whole life, everything about you is about reconciling opposites. And I was like, what was I like in my 30s at the time? I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. He just put words to it.
Yeah.
I
I
just
love that
love it. I
too.
love that you got an astrology reading in Bali. I want to be you for a little while. Did you come from a family of scientists and spiritualists, or what were your parents like?
Yes. So my parents were both highly educated, intellectual people. My mom, a computer programmer, my dad, a biomedical engineer. My dad was always very rational. And
Mhm.
for him, spirituality and religion, we were Jewish, but we were culturally Jewish. And so it was about this long history of what happened to the Jews and being connected to that lineage. He
Mhm.
wasn't much about rituals or customs, or I think, and he's changed. Like he's older now, and I think he's much more connected to God and has his
Mm,
personal prayer practice. So it's
mm,
changed. My mother, however, was a spiritual seeker. She was a computer programmer, is a computer, but they're both retired now, but she was a computer programmer. And from day one, and as early as I could remember, she was always a spiritual seeker, and her sister as well. And she'd always read books about different faith traditions, even outside of Judaism. She'd read about Hare Krishna and about Buddhism. And in Russia, those books were hard to come by because it was, communism at the time in the 1980s was anti-religious. So it was hard to find these books, and my mom would find them. But then my dad always felt like, how are you reading books outside Judaism? That felt blasphemous. Russia
mm.
wasn't as open-minded of a place at that time. And so my dad's views were probably the dominant views of the time. And so this is part of the reason eventually, their interests diverged. They're now divorced and remarried for many years, still good friends. But it was, yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
The
The
teeter-totter of the
teeter-totter.
parents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think about reincarnation?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
what
I
do
think,
can we talk about that? Like reincarnation, what
sure.
happens after we pass away? We're going to talk to Anita Morjani at the end of
Amazing.
April.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk to her too,
I
because
love
I just
Anita.
find these conversations really valuable in everyday living.
All
Like,
walks of life. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And, I have an uncle who's very, very ill right now, and he's, probably going to pass away sometime in the near future. And it's a fascinating thing to watch people age and what happens to the people around you. And when you have a really strong belief system, it makes it easier to accept what's happening in your life. And so I just wonder, where do you believe in reincarnation and near death experiences, and can you talk a little about things like that?
Absolutely. And so this brings me to the concept of the soul. And I'm very, very interested in this concept of soul because as a psychiatrist, the term psyche, like the goddess Psyche, was the goddess of the soul. And yet, the way that I was trained in my psychiatry training at NYU and before that at Yale Medical School, the word soul was never mentioned. And so
Mm.
it was very curious. Here I was being trained as a doctor of the soul, but where was the soul in all this? And so it led me to travel the world as part of my residency. That was part of my the reason why I went to Rwanda to be able to work with the genocide survivors and PTSD there. But also I traveled to so many other places trying to understand this concept of soul. And it took me to ashrams in India and learning Buddhist meditation in Thailand and working with different shaman in South Africa and South America to really understand what is this concept of soul and how does it relate to healing. And my favorite definition of this soul came from a Mexican shaman, Fernando Broca, who defined it as being comprised of two parts. The first part of the soul is that which connects us to everybody and everything. So it's our interconnectedness. And the second part of our soul is that which comprises our uniqueness as a human
Mm.
being. And so this is the soul. And the soul, as many
Mm.
traditions will attest to, is immortal. And it goes through many lifetimes. And we have many lessons that, we go through over and over. And this is this concept of reincarnation, which scientific, empiricism doesn't really have a concept for. And yet so many traditions from Kabbalah to Buddhism to many other traditions really believe in this idea of our reincarnated cycles of life.
And is it
So
about coming back and learning the lessons properly that you didn't learn in a specific lifetime? So you have to come back and try again? Is it like Earth school?
Mhm.
yeah, that's certainly a lot of people's ideas about the purpose of reincarnation, that the earth is the only place that we can learn certain lessons. Because we feel pain here. We're in 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions if you count time here. So it's a different kind of experience than in all the other dimensions in which our soul can exist. So this is the soul that we can reincarnate into in order to learn those lessons, expand our capacities, expand the lessons that our soul masters, and then either come back or eventually move on. And I think it's a fascinating concept. I like the concept. I certainly have bought into the concept, but and there's even some scientific evidence. The scientific evidence for reincarnation is that certain children can come back with knowledge of past lives that they can have
Right.
no way absolutely of knowing,
Right.
including certain birthmarks that they've had in past lives and validated. So, there's something to that. It's a very, very interesting idea.
And in all of your reincarnation, and spiritual work with the other beliefs, I had always heard that when you have a prominent birthmark, that was part of the way that you died. It was a
Hmm.
wound or something
Never
that
heard
led to
that.
your death. And I've also heard that the only thing that always stays the same is your eyes in every life. Did you ever hear that in any of
I
your travels?
No, but I like
Oh.
both of those. We like, get our compendium of wisdom, and those two things felt like they're part of an important compendium of wisdom. That feels very intuitively right.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
It's all about the feeling of it, isn't it? When people are
absolutely.
like, you believe in God, I go, I have to
Yeah,
believe in
has
God.
to be
It's
something.
the only way I know that I can exist because of that noisy mind that we addressed, 45 minutes ago. I can't walk through the world and see, enormous piles of trash on the streets of New York without going, okay, I am the hands and feet. I can do something about this. I can recycle. There are actionable items. But at the end of the day, there is a greater source. There is a greater good. There is something beyond that is caring for us, that has, yes, there's free will, but there's also something being designed that has existed for billions of years, far beyond. I have to. This is not a choice for me, Stephanie J. Block,
Well, and
to
especially
exist
right
without
now,
that, that,
especially right now, because everything's so chaotic,
of
you
course.
have to find solace in the belief that it's leading to somewhere better and that this chaos that we're all literally swimming in, like what is happening? We have to believe that it's the death of something that doesn't serve us anymore and moving into a
And the
new place
beginnings
that's
of
better for us.
something better and
Because
bigger.
there's
Yeah.
no other way to get through it other than
No.
to believe
Yeah,
those
yeah,
things.
absolutely. And what you're talking about, it's such an interesting concept too, as to what happens to faith when people undergo great trauma. Because
Right.
trauma and difficulty actually can, for certain people, break faith. They could say, how can God do this to me? What is happening? How can God allow this to happen? There's many people who don't believe in God because the Holocaust happened or because, the Rwandan genocide happened.
Sure.
And on the other hand, there's also the opposite. People endure great trauma, and then they find that on the other side of that, that's how they discovered God. And that's when
Yeah.
they started to believe because there was no other time that there was no other way that they were going to get through it.
And I think for you, you say in your book that God and the universe, it's the same thing to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, in my book, I was talking about connecting to something greater and
Hmm.
how when people describe the idea of connecting to something greater, which is how many people define spirituality, that for some people that spirit something greater is God. For other people, that something greater is the universe, a collective consciousness,
Hmm.
source, mother nature, or a set of collective values like hope, love, trust, and perseverance. And
Yeah.
all of those could be the basis of people's spiritual presence.
Yeah. And as we're discussing all of this from all these brilliant minds, both in the science world and the spiritual field, I never hear I, self, 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 self.
Mm.
It's connectedness to everything, connectedness to human beings, connected. There is an interconnected. And I'm not saying we have to ignore ourselves as an individual, unique energy source, but it just doesn't work by yourself. Those sort of silos just don't work. Am I pushing a narrative here that is like just my own belief? I know that this is the second time around that
No,
I've said it, but I'm picking up all these beautiful, spiritual crumbs, and they are making this loaf of it is a together thing. It is a
exactly, exactly,
unified energy thing.
But not
exactly. And
necessarily unified in a religion, because like I can't identify with any
No,
religion, but I identify with like girlfriends and people who think the way I think, and we actually
but
get
we're breathing
together.
the same air. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? There's no new air being made. We're all drinking and living in the same water. There's no new water being made. Like we are walking the existence and the ground and that has got to be connectivity in some inexplicable way.
absolutely, absolutely. And I believe that, yes, that interconnectedness really is the basis of who we are as individuals and what enables us to flow and to have the best life. And when we feel that we are alone in this world, that underlies our mental health crisis,
mm,
that undermines greater depression, worse outcomes for physical illness, greater rates of any kind of medical condition.
Yes.
And when we feel connected and supported, it's the exact opposite. So the more that we can give to others and be of service to others to be part of that interconnectedness, the better. And the more that we could connect in a genuine way to communities that are aligned with our values, the better our own outcomes will be and the outcomes of those that we love.
That word genuine so important because we were made promises by this cell phone. We were made promises by social, assets and Instagram, and we were going to expand our friendship and our connectivity, and it's doing the exact opposite. So
yeah.
much like the bags of trash that we can't look away from in New York, with this existing in our world and AI, literally the horse is out of the gate, and hopefully we can contain that. How do you view this? What can we do as living, breathing beings to sort of offset it or counter, like the teeter totter, kind of bring it more to the other side of that of kind of true, genuine connectivity and human relationships that will lead us to greater health? Talk to us a little bit about what that future looks like and what we can do to make that a
Yeah,
better world for
absolutely.
ourselves.
And the answer to that question is actually quite complicated and manyfold. Number one, it's having the right safeguards for AI because AI is essentially a reflection of us. We created it, and it's a mirror of what human potential is capable of, including the amazing parts and the pitfalls and dangers. So we have to create the proper safeguards and have the foresight to be able to realize there are dangers, to know what those are, and then to be able to say, here's what we need to do to be able to um, put those as much into our control as possible. That's number one. Number two, to retain our humanity and our integrity. And so to be able to have other people in our lives and with whom we feel genuinely connected and not have replacements for real relationships and authenticity and genuine connection with AI, even though it can have certain roles that it will play and certain ways it'll make our life easier. That's wonderful. Use all the positive benefits, but ultimately not use it as a replacement for genuine human connection, which it just can't do
Have you
at the
found yourself in some rooms where these discussions are being had about the safeguards or the future of it or what it looks like? I
all
feel
the
like a
time,
mind and a heart like
all the
yours
time.
needs to be in those rooms. Okay, great, 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 great.
Yes. Yes. I feel like people are more and more worried and thinking and trying to figure out what is our role and responsibility for what we've created. And it's so exciting as to what it could do. And it's so scary for what the negative potential is as well. So we have to do both and figure out how to modulate, how to enhance the part that and exacerbate the part that is excited and all the good things can come in creating more jobs and human future and potential and helping humanity to you know to do everything from reducing poverty and hunger to increasing efficiency in jobs, right? And then the negative part is the possibility of it taking over certain
Replacement.
functions with human
Yeah.
beings not having control and having all the AI scenarios in the scary movies actually play out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
That's it is.
It's terrifying.
And mine is so limited. What I use my phone for is so limiting,
Oh,
truly.
it's unbelievable.
Truly.
But I think
Mm-hmm.
part of what at least for me is, like I participated in this thing. I think Steph, you did too, where at a specific time,
It was
um,
7 a.m.
uh,
on the
on
24th.
yeah, on the 24th, we were asked, everyone is to focus for literally 5 minutes on these 4 words and breathe together all around the world. And then you do it and you go, well, nothing's changed. There's still lines at the airport, or, and because we're so used to immediacy on these phones and in life, that we have to somehow tap into the knowledge that change is not immediate, change is slow. And faith is the only thing that we can really hold on to while we wait for what we hope to change and improve and connect us. We have to just practice faith that it will happen eventually.
But those 5 minutes, ML, were so powerful, I should say for me, because with that breath, I felt like I was centered a little more, which made me a little more kinder, a little more patient throughout my day. And I think those ripple effects, even in my small little area of the world, made a change. So if there were millions and millions of us that collectively at that moment took that 5 minutes, I don't know if we fixed anything, but I certainly... Yeah, there had to have been. There's no way there couldn't have, because it's very rare that I will just sit for 5 minutes, breathe, and focus on the same mindset and the same words as other people throughout this entire world. So I have to believe we did a little something, a little something.
Completely agree.
Our email, we have a really young audience base, and Steph and I say it so often on this podcast. I wish I understood more deeply in my 20s the things that I'm exploring now in my life, because it's made my life so much richer. So I love that you're here talking to our really young audience, and I know that they will get many treasures from the conversation. So thanks. We'll be right back with the 5 questions, but first a word from our sponsor. First one, tell me your favorite sandwich.
Probably turkey and Swiss.
On what kind of bread?
Sourdough. And then, maybe a Reuben.
Ooh, nice. A Reuben. Do you use the dip with the Reuben or just a dry Reuben?
Definitely. The Russian dressing, of course.
Okay.
We get a lot of Reubens.
I know. People do love the Reuben.
Yeah.
If we walked into your closet, is there a garment or an item that you will never get rid of because of the memories it holds?
Well, maybe some South American, when I've been part of, beautiful ceremonies there, some of the South American garb.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Now I see. I really wish I could just live your life with you. It's unbelievable. I'm so jealous. Okay, if you could wake up tomorrow morning with any superpower, what would you pick?
Oh, I would have perfect intuition.
Oh my gosh.
Totally.
Then you'd be so frustrated with all the other people. You'd be like, what is wrong with you people?
I just told you, wake up, people.
3 micro joys that you've experienced today.
Today, a delicious cup of coffee in the morning, walking down the streets of New York, where it was really great weather, and seeing a dear friend of mine, Jennifer, this afternoon.
All right, final question. It's a biggie. If you were a nail polish color, what color would you be, and what would the cheeky little name be?
Oh, definitely red, and it would just be bright red.
Bright red.
Bright red, baby. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, yes.
What a pleasure.
We could talk for hours and hours and hours, but we're valuing
Absolutely.
your
Thank you so
time and your
much.
talents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marilee and Stephanie. I'm very excited to be here with you guys and to speak to your audience. So thank you again for inviting
And
me.
thank you for being so courageous and blending these things that, needed to be found in the crossroads, and pushing a really important thing forward. Thanks for everything you do. It's really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
All right,
We
ladies.
stay on and chat about you. Have a good one.
Perfect.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, what struck a chord with us? So great, right?
Yeah.
Did you get to read her book at all? I'm
I
still in the
haven't.
middle of it.
I'm embarrassed to say I haven't.
You'll like it.
I know I will,
Yeah.
because there were so many things that she said. I hearken back to my sweet voice teacher, who of course is a life teacher and a mentor, Jill Goodsell. But she was telling us, right, about the breath. So in for 2,
Yeah.
hold for 4, out for 8. My teacher did that right away. Like I wasn't allowed to really sing for 2 years. It was very much about making and sustaining vibration, laying on my back, watching my belly rise and fall, doing those breathing exercises. And now I'm sort of redefining what those lessons were
Mm.
because when I came to her, I was an anxious 11-year-old who didn't really have much confidence in myself at all, who felt a bit unmoored. Now, did I know that at 11? Probably not. But did she? Probably. So,
Mm.
under the guise of, rearing a talent, I think she was really trying to shape my spirit and settle me. And there were so many things that she said that 40 years ago I could hear in the voice of my teacher, Jill Goodsell, saying these practices and going, she was really laying on some serious ideas to a very young woman, or young girl, I should say, that has shaped me throughout these decades and that are still valid practices now. They don't go out of style, they don't go out of trend.
When you have those little whispers, is it her voice?
It is absolutely her voice. Yeah.
That's so
And I
cool.
will immediately call her and say, again, I'm reminded of you and the impact that you've had on my life because these are not like, willy-nilly by the seat of her pants. She gave me such universal practices and understandings that then I could make specific for myself. And I think what a great, bag of tools. What an incredible
What a
bag of
great
tools.
lady. Well, I mean,
Oh
what
my
just an amazing
gosh.
person.
And she doesn't stop. I mean, I don't know her age. She would say she's ageless and timeless, but she's still teaching, 8 hours a day behind the piano. She had to be in her 40s when I was 11. So what are we talking? I
But
mean, truly.
see, that's again that interconnectedness. It's not about singing. It's about
No.
everything else that goes
Yeah.
behind what a simple note is, right?
Yep. Yes.
So it's so magical. Like I get little goosebumps thinking of that. It's not the
Yeah. And I
act of singing because it's not the outcome that you're going for.
no.
It's being in it and all that it is and discovering the things that you had no idea what that note even was.
No.
And oh gosh.
And I'd get frustrated, I'm getting a
Sure.
little graphic right now, y'all, but I'd call and say, "Oh, I have terrible period cramps. I can't come." She goes, "You have to come. That's when you need to come. Get in the car or have your mom drive you. We're going to breathe. We're going to heal. We're going to
Yeah, don't check
move."
out, check in.
Correct. Yes.
Mm.
And I always left feeling stronger, more aligned, much more in tune with my body and my person. It's really, really there's so much I wanted to ask also about, as silly as it sounds when we brought up Stanford and then Yale and NYU. I wanted to know if there was like a colloquialism on the East Coast and the West Coast that she would find differences in the way people thought or what was important to
Mm.
them spiritually, if that looked a little different.
And
I
that's
mean,
interesting. Yeah.
there has to be. I mean, we're all human beings, yes, but our environment is also so informative. I found it was interesting when she was talking about the twins and the was it geomes or biomes and how one would, show itself and then for the
Hmm.
twin it wouldn't. And I was like, is that what we would define nature or yeah, over nurture? I don't know. It just doesn't stop. And every being and every brain is completely different. So there won't ever be,
Yeah.
one final answer
That's what I
for
say. You
everyone.
can't replicate the tests because
No.
everybody's so unique. And even though we all come from the same source, every experience is unique and has to be.
Yeah.
So fascinating. Well, I really enjoyed talking to her.
I knew you would. I think I think if I know you as well as I do, perhaps some of our interviews in the future might be a little less singy dingy and
Um,
more
could
hearty
be,
farty.
could be, could be solely poly. I think it's really important to dig into that stuff,
Yeah, much
especially
like my
now.
voice teacher, right?
Yeah, it's
That's
so
right.
important. And I think that that was such a great thing for you to bring up because, as I said, like this reaches such young ears
Yeah.
and you have to understand why you want to embrace it. Why do I want to explore this? Because it's not just about singing, it's not just about acting, it's about tapping into something that cannot be quantified,
Right.
that can only expand you in ways that you can't imagine because you haven't experienced them yet.
And also continues to fuel you in an industry that can be depleting.
Yeah.
So these are beautiful. That tool bag needs to have the spirituality, however you define that, and the breath and the groundedness and the understanding of the connectedness and the all of it in order for you to step into an audition space and feel like this has more purpose than just singing for 2 minutes, getting a yay or a nay, and then, preparing
Right.
yourself for the next one. It is
Right.
as we call it, what's the little, it's not a gopher wheel. What's it called? A hamster wheel. Right, right. That is not going to be fulfilling. That is not going to be fulfilling. So go beyond, and then you use your art form to help express that energy, spirituality, consciousness, however you want to define that. It goes far beyond the notes on the page.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I hope that y'all listeners enjoy these kinds of chats because we do want to do more of them. I think they're really important. And plus, I just like to talk to people like
I
her.
know it fulfills me too. This might be a selfish endeavor, but I swear you all will take from it great, great life lessons and gifts and just portals, different ways of thinking,
Yeah,
for sure.
totally. All right. Love you.
All right. I love you too.
Bye. Stages podcast is produced by Mary Lee Fairbanks and Stephanie J. Block. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Join us on social media pages or sign up for the mailing list at stagespodcast.net. That is also where you will find Stages swag. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share and rate and review the show. It really helps us grow. Big thank you to Noah Kaiserman and Garrett Healy for the original music, and Allison Arns, who has been with us since day one. See you soon.